As diplomatic efforts intensify to halt the war in Gaza, all eyes turn to Cairo today, where US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Senior Advisor Jared Kushner have arrived for crucial ceasefire talks. Their mission comes under the weight of a dramatic ultimatum from President Donald Trump, who warned Hamas that it has until 6 p.m. today to agree to his deal to end the war in Gaza. The talks in the Egyptian capital, scheduled for tomorrow, have become the latest focal point in the struggle to bring quiet to a conflict that has now stretched on for 2 years since Hamas's devastating October 7th attacks. Trump revealed that Israel had agreed to move back its forces, a significant concession designed to pave the way for a truce. According to the president, once Hamas confirms a new line, a ceasefire begins. That includes the release of all hostages within days, as Tuesday marks 2 years since they were taken by Hamas on October 7th. This deadline and the accompanying conditions have raised both hopes and concerns among regional leaders, analysts, and millions of families affected by the war. Foreign policy analyst Rebecca Grant, speaking on the developments, described the Cairo talks as a pivotal moment. Grant noted that Witkoff and Kushner were preparing to sit down with one of the Hamas leaders allegedly targeted during the Israeli strike on Qatar. So, what a meeting this will be. The encounter underscores the delicate balance between diplomacy and the ongoing military conflict. For 2 years, the war has seen waves of rocket attacks, airstrikes, hostage crises, and failed negotiations. The presence of senior American envoys, combined with Trump's personal deadline, has added urgency rarely seen in prior rounds of talks. Grant highlighted that we're waiting for Hamas. They've agreed to release the hostages, which is incredible. We're waiting to hear on some of the other points, such as disarming Hamas, and then I'm sure Hamas wants to talk about what participation they might have in the Palestinian body that will be temporarily governing Gaza. So there's some high stakes in Egypt today, but it looks like the momentum is very much in the right direction. Yet even with such momentum, doubts remain over Hamas's willingness to comply fully with any agreement. The group's history of conditional commitments and shifting demands looms large over the process. Grant was asked about the trustworthiness of Hamas. How much can we trust Hamas will live up to this? Because, as you point out, they're not saying anything about whether they'd be willing to lay down arms, and they're certainly not committing to not participating in a future government. And we also heard in the last 24 hours from Hamas that they are going to release all the hostages once the field conditions were met. But it isn't clear that Hamas has indicated what those field conditions are. She responded candidly, Hamas is always slippery. There's always one more point to negotiate. Part of that field condition will be the IDF stopping its strikes into Gaza. And even President Trump has said, we've got to have quiet there, otherwise it's just too dangerous. And I know Hamas will have some other ridiculous demand. But the pressure of the entire region, the entire world at this point, the pressure is on Hamas to release those hostages and let Gaza move forward. Grant credited the current state of negotiations to Trump's direct involvement. She argued that without the president's personal engagement and his willingness to leverage American influence, the warring sides might never have reached this juncture. In her words, I think Trump has gotten his message through. So credit Donald Trump 100% restoration of American leadership. This is all to his credit. He's put incredible pressure on Israel and on Hamas, but created the incentives for a broader peace arrangement in the Middle East. And I think that is what has added countries from Indonesia to Egypt to Jordan, Saudi Arabia, so many others that are now leaning on Hamas to get this deal done. This is the right deal. It's a splendid deal. It could really open a new chapter in the Middle East. I hope it does. The stakes are high, and the world would like to see those hostages released very soon. Grant's remarks underscore the complex interplay between diplomatic incentives and political leadership, highlighting how the ceasefire talks are as much about political will as they are about military realities. Trump's ultimatum and the US team's presence in Cairo have triggered unprecedented regional alignment. Arab states that previously hesitated to weigh in, such as Indonesia and Jordan, are reportedly leaning on Hamas to accept the deal. Analysts believe that this mounting regional pressure, combined with international calls for humanitarian relief, could tilt the balance toward a breakthrough. For ordinary Gazans, meanwhile, the promise of even a temporary halt in fighting holds the hope of desperately needed aid deliveries and a reprieve from relentless bombardment. For the families of hostages, the prospect of a release after 2 years of anguish is both agonizing and potentially life-changing. While much of the focus has been on Hamas's response, Israel's role in implementing and sustaining the ceasefire is equally pivotal. The Israeli government, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has faced both internal criticism and international pressure to balance its military objectives with humanitarian concerns and diplomatic imperatives. The Israeli military's willingness to pull back its forces, as Trump announced, marks a significant tactical concession. Yet questions remain over whether Netanyahu's coalition partners and domestic political allies will support what some hardliners see as a risky compromise. Grant hinted that both sides, Hamas and the Israeli leadership, may be responding to Trump's pressure, partly for political reasons. The credibility of the deal, therefore, hinges on whether each side's leaders can resist domestic political pushback long enough to see it through. The coming hours and days will determine whether Cairo becomes the launchpad for peace or merely another stop in a long history of failed Middle East negotiations. Diplomats from Egypt, Qatar and the United States are expected to continue mediating between the parties, even as global observers track each twist and turn. The symbolism of the talks occurring in Cairo is not lost on analysts. Egypt, often at the centre of regional diplomacy, has once again assumed the role of mediator, hoping to deliver a rare win for both humanitarian relief and regional stability. The narrative unfolding around this ceasefire effort highlights the enduring complexity of Middle East diplomacy. Trump's hard deadline, rare in such negotiations, has injected a sense of urgency that could either break the deadlock or provoke new tensions if Hamas balks. The planned release of hostages, a central humanitarian demand for both Israel and the international community, represents the most tangible potential outcome. Yet Hamas's insistence on field conditions and its reluctance to renounce future political participation raise doubts about how sustainable any agreement can be. If the Cairo talks succeed, they could mark not only the end of a bloody chapter in Gaza, but also a demonstration of how international diplomacy, regional alignment and political pressure can combine to force even hardened adversaries to compromise. If they fail, however, the consequences could be dire: renewed fighting, prolonged suffering for civilians, and further erosion of trust in future peace efforts.